Right, hello there. Right, making a PVC flute pipe. This is inspired by how to make a homemade flute, PVC flute that is, from far north bushcraft and survival on the internet, and how to make a Native American flute with PVC, which is an updated expanded version, but if you put that into YouTube you'll find it. One of the major differences between this and the other ones, the idea basically came from the States, so they use Schedule 40 piping, which I found very hard to get in the UK. I did get a bit from the America, which was quite expensive, but when starting out you can just use standard plumbing piping, which is generally 21.5mm plumbing pipe, and I got this from B&Q by a company, made by a company called Flute. It's actually a lot thinner, the depth, well, the actual thickness of the plastic, but you can still make a really nice flute out of it. So I'm going to go through it. This is going to be tuned eventually to G sharp, but I'll show you G sharp minor, I think, but I'll show you as we go along how we do all of that. Alright. Right, so first just going to get the piping, and we're going to draw a line down the centre line of it. So all the holes line up, because obviously you want a nice flow that goes through the pipe to make a nice tone. The length of this piece is, I would start with, something like, longer as it is, the lower the tone, relatively speaking. We've got about 51 centimetres of piping, which this floor I think is about a 5-foot strip of flow pass 21.5mm overflow waste pipe. Is about £2.80, so you're literally talking probably about 50p worth of pipe there. Right, just going on with the centre line, that'll be our mouthpiece in. What I've done on the edge of this piping is taken a bit of medium sort of grade sandpaper and just gone round the edge here just to smooth it off, just to make the flow a bit nicer on the mouth when you're blowing into it, and to make it just probably sort of a nicer sort of entry for the air, depending if you're blowing away and making different noises with it. Here we're going to have, we're going for, let's check my measurements, is 1 7/8 inches if you mark there, and 3.5 inches there. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to slightly sand this down, because we're going to have an air hole here and then the sound hole. Do see the prints out at the end. I've got some measurements, etc., but just talk you through it as well. Right, so what we're going to do is just sand a bit of this down. This is a tool that I've made. It's basically a 12-inch ruler, a bit of sandpaper. It fits just nice, it's perfect size, and what we're going to do is just do this. Tape on, and this is our tool. This is quite coarse grade sandpaper. I think it's called glass paper. So we're going to do that, and then what we're going to do, we've got our markings there which we measured out. Just got a piece of metal. You can use a metal ruler or anything really, or even a pan handle or something like that. Got this little clamp here. It probably does help to have a clamp or a workbench or something like that, but this works fine. Just take to the table. I'm just going to use this as a guide, and then slowly start to take off some of this. So that's just my guide. And what you need to be aware of, because the pipe's fairly thin, because I went through and wasted quite a lot of piping doing this, so this is why the video to help. I'll show you it in a minute when it's done. But sanding it down, if you go too far, obviously it's going to go through the plastic, and we don't want that, because it is actually quite, I think it's the wall thickness it's called technically, it's quite thin. So I know for a fact that we can go to 1 centimetre pushing, but about 0.9 centimetres. When you can measure across and keep it as flat as possible while you're sanding, 0.9 centimetres across, you generally won't go through the plastic unless there's some imperfections in the plastic, because it's not exact all the way through, but it's pretty good stuff. It's obviously not made for flutes but plumbing, but 0.9 centimetres you should be okay on the whole with, I would say, sort of 95% of the flutes you make. I'm just keeping it equally weighted, the distribution over, holding it side by side. Wants it nice and even. If you end up with a bit of a slant, it's quite hard to end up flattening out, because the air's going to flow over here, so you want this as flat as possible. Obviously using quite coarse grade, and then I'll go to fine glass paper, finer sandpaper, and make this really, really smooth, because you want the air to come over and slide across the top without too much turbulence. Right, okay, as I said, when we're filing this down with this, obviously got to be a bit careful. This has happened with another flute, but it still played quite well. With this one, we're at about 0.85 millimeters. You can see a little bit of a groove coming in here. Let me show a bit, basically just a little bit of a darkening of the plastic where it's getting a little bit thin, I think. Better not poke it through there. So anyway, what we're going to do now is take that sandpaper off and put some very fine sandpaper on, and give it another rub here so it's absolutely smooth, so the air flows over it without too much turbulence, as said. Right, this is a good opportunity to show when accident happens. I say when I was usually get 0.9 millimeters of flat surface out before it splits through, but this has got somewhat of a little mark, and it's starting to crack a little bit. But rather than throwing away the pipe, it's a good opportunity to show you this. This isn't on the kit list, but I've just got a bit of super glue here, and what I'm doing is I'm just putting a puddle of it across, which then I'll finally sandpaper down when it's dry. So we've probably got about 0.5 of a mil puddle on there. But what you've got to be careful is don't leave it on too long, because it actually starts to melt the plastic. So what I do is I just leave it and then just push it into the crack a little bit there, and then smooth it round, because you don't want it bubbling the plastic, because it really will knacker it. So then move it around like that. Obviously don't keep your finger in one place, because your finger will stick. That just makes it a little bit tougher, and you'll still be able to use that as a surface to let the wind, your air, your breath blow across. So that should be okay, and I'll put the markings on in a minute, and then drill a couple of holes, and then show you how I make the air hole and the sound hole. Right then, so we've got it nice and flat there, very, very smooth there. I'm going to mark off our air holes now. I'm just going to go along the centre line again, because it's nice to get, for the flow of air, to get a nice smooth tone. Just going to draw a midline there again, because we've sanded off that, so we've got a nice midline running up the flute, up our pipe, and we're going to do 2 inches to 1/8 of an inch there, mark a line there, and then at the 3-inch mark, so that's where our holes are going to be. I'll say if you see the sheet or the printout, I don't know, I'll put it on either at the beginning and possibly at the end as well. The maximum hole you want is 3/16 here and here, and the maximum width is basically half the diameter of the actual tube, roughly speaking. So this is going to be somewhere around here, which works out about 0.8 to 0.9 millimeters. I'll measure it exactly, because with the other pipes, the other flutes I've made, I've always kept this exactly the same, the makeup here, and then just changed the holes, and obviously I'll show you the tuning in a little bit. So I'll drill some holes here and show you what we've done. Right, so that's 2 mil drill bit, just drilled on the marks there, and then got a little file. So I've got these little selection here, which is quite nice little files. There's a little square one here, which I'll just start to go in and start to basically file down to make a rectangle here at the front. No wider than dimensions mentioned. At the back you can actually have a circle, but some people do it rectangular as well. I'll be doing a rectangle here because I quite like quite a lot of airflow to come through here, so you don't have to breathe too hardly down the bottom here. And then we'll build the top bit, which is I think it's called a fipple or a fetish in flute terminology, and we'll go from there. So I'll do this just as I'll show you it when it's done. A little correction, let me just make sure I've got this on camera. A little correction with regards to the drill bit. I've got it wrong on my sheet as well on the kit list. I've put a 2mm drill bit. These are just Wilco's HSS drill bits, 5mm. You won't need any more for making the air hole, sound hole, and the other ones, because to increase the hole size and obviously to tidy these up, we're using these little files, which I got a 5-pack from Wilco's in the UK for a very reasonable price. So that's what we're going for with regards to them. Right, what I've got here is I've used all my complete. This is a fish and chip fork, which are ideal for this purpose from a UK fish and chip shop. You can probably get them all around the world. So that's end done. So we have the other fork bit there, and this is the only bit that I've got left. And unfortunately, the fish and chip shop's closed at the moment, so I can't go and grab a load. But what I do is I sort of make. This is for the bottom of the fetish, which is a wooden bit that goes over the top. And I also make a bit of a sanding tool. What I'm going to do here is just basically cut it so it's the width of this here. I'm going to use it as a fine sander just to clean up the holes here, and also put an angle on the front here, which is where the air comes over, and then it splits the air here and the air goes down the chamber to make the sound. So I'm just going to fix a couple of pieces of sandpaper to this. What I'm going to use is a coarse bit on one side and some very fine grade on the other side. Right, so what I've been doing is just using our homemade tool out of fish and chip shop fork with a couple of pieces of sandpaper glued to it, obviously cut trim to size, to tidy up these holes. I'll say you don't want them to go too wide. This is getting pretty wide now. I think it's over our original size of 3/16 of an inch, but I'm sure it'll be okay. And now we have to put an angle. I'll tie these up a little bit more, but generally just doing the same thing, just making them as rectangular as possibly can and equal. Because obviously any offsets of stuff is going to cause turbulence, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. You just get more breath sound going through the flute, and sort of less tone, so to speak, but it sounds more sort of pan-pipey, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So even if it is a bit wonky, it doesn't really matter that much. Now we're going to basically, what we need to do is with a piece of sandpaper. I mean, you can, if you've got a file. I mean, I've got in this little file pack, this one's a bit oval on one side and then flat on there. We can start with just feeding this in and place one a 45-degree angle here. So it's quite good to start with a file. You want it nice and even. And what I'll do is I'll put 45-degree angle on there. Obviously we don't want to shave too much in here because it's only thin pipe. 45-degree angle there, and then what I'll do is use very, very fine paper, fine sandpaper, probably this stuff, the finest grade that I've got anyway, which is a little bit finer than this. Probably stick it to another bit of wood, just to really get a smooth edge on there. Then just check as you look down. I'll show you a shot. I'll take a shot from down there, but you don't need to touch these at all. Just try to get them nice and flat, because the air's just going to come up over here and then split there. Okay, so we need 45-degree angle here. As I say, just steady away really, but try to not keep it lopsided. Try to keep sort of equal pressure, so it's a equal edge here. So just keep going like that, and I'll show you a shot of what it looks like from this way in a minute. So what I've done here is just got some very, very fine paper and just fold it over without any wood in the middle, just to finalise this angle here, just very gently, so it becomes a very, very sharp edge. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be sharp, but I feel it needs to, so I'll do it anyway. Just gently rub that. You can always polish that up when we put a bit of cork in here, which I'll show you in a minute. I'll just show you this as well. I've got just a cane here, which sometimes when you're sanding you end up with and cutting through the pipe, sometimes you end up with bits of flaky bits inside like that, a little bit, which is just shown there. So it's quite good to just have a cane just to push them through. So obviously you don't want anything in the air chamber as the air goes through, because that'll add to turbulence and it'll affect the shape of the air flowing through the flute, which isn't necessarily a bad thing once again, but I like to get as much tone out of it as possible. On this side I've actually got some sandpaper taped to it. On previous designs or previously doing this, I used to shove the sandpaper up the pipe, and certainly when I'm making the holes for making the nose, to do the same thing basically, but obviously that's going to rough up the inside of the plastic, which is also going to affect the airflow and cause turbulence, and you get more breath and less tone. So I've just got that on there. I don't use it anymore. I don't think it's a particularly good idea. It was just an idea of mine which didn't really work out, so I just use a bit of a cane or something like that just to push things through like that, and so you can use a nail or something, or some tweezers, just to grab the bits of plastic off, just to make it very smooth on the inside. And obviously you can look down the tube to make sure there's not bits of flakiness inside the tube, which again sort of get in the way of the air's smooth flow through the pipe. Right, you might be able to just see this. As I say, I've sanded this down quite a lot. What's happened here is a slight crack starting to appear here. We've got a nice edge there, so that's good. So once again, what I do is, it can happen with this thinner piping. The Schedule 40, which is usually from the American side of things with how to make these with PVC piping, is a lot thicker piping. Just give me a second, I'll show you what that is. They actually, I only got one piece. I'm intending to try another one, which I think will be a lot better, but this is very thick gauge piping, which can make a beautiful pipe, very, very heavy duty. But I haven't got any of that, and works out a little bit more expensive. Probably works out about sort of £3 or £4 per pipe. If you're in America, probably just probably about $3 really. So that works out better. But this makes good flutes anyway. So what I'm doing is just got super glue on here again, and I'm just popping some over where it hasn't totally cracked, but you can see where it's just about to, and just push some in there and over the edge there just to strengthen it once again. And what I'll do is, so you just put a few blobs on there. I'm putting stuff over the other side because we need this to be leveled as possible, so the air flows nicely. Just filling in the cracks there and strengthening it, and then I just use the our tool here again, our fine grade sandpaper, over the ruler, just to go over it very, very lightly again, just to smooth that off. So if it does crack a little bit, it really isn't the end of the world, and it'll just add to the character of the pipe, because obviously when you're making these, even if you tune them to the same notes, there's going to be slight variance in the amount of breath and tone, and little nuances which add to the making of the pipe itself. Right, so that's recording. Right, so what we've got here is just a standard wine cork. Some are thicker than others. What I've done is chop the cork off, so it's going to fit in this gap here precisely. So you want to measure between there and there, and get a small hacksaw and just put it in a clamp and just saw down. It's easier with a clamp. Just clamp it in, as I say, saw straight down so it fits between that gap in there. I'll say at the moment that's a little bit too big. Let me just move the camera a minute. I'll show you what I'll do here. Just get your cork, and what I'll do is just start to rub it here. You might find another way to do it. Some people use rubbers as well. What I found with rubbers, it doesn't take so much moisture, almost gets a bit too sweaty in there a bit too quickly. Standard rubbers, you can cut them, and it's quite easy to cut down on a rubber with a Stanley blade. Once you made a template of the end of the flute, but I find that corks are the best at the moment. So just start to sand it down, move it down, sand a little bit off, and a little bit off, and a little bit off like that, and just keep on going until you get a nice fit. Now here's one that I did earlier out of another flute, which I'm not using at the moment because I got the air holes wrong. I've kind of perfected the air holes now, so they work alright, the holes which make the notes. So what I've done with this one, as I say, the same methodology, just slowly sanding it off. And if I just move this to the end here, you'll see it fits in. So you do want a tight fit, well, just so it pushes in with a bit of a push, because you don't want any air travelling around it. I push that in there and just get a cane, and then we're going to start to push it in here. You see it go over the first time, and then we just want it to stop just there. And obviously, once again, I'll tidy up so that there's a little bit of plastic that's flaked out here. So get a bit finicky, get that out of the way. And once again, find a little piece of sandpaper, just give it a little rub there, just make sure it's all clean the edge. So now the air will hit there and flow out now. So we'll make our, I think it's called a fetish or a fipple, and I'll show you how to make that now. Right, okay, I do apologise, I don't know if this is a fipple or a fetish, but either way. And what it is I've got a nice bit of cedar wood, which does smell very nice. I think a lot of flutes use cedar wood. You can make a PVC brace that goes around it, but have a look on YouTube how you can do that. You can just use a PVC pipe connector to slide over this, but I personally prefer wood at the moment. What this is obviously just a chunk of cedar, which I've just put a little dip in there, so there's like you can tie it on an elastic band, just hold it on there. I'll show you that in a bit. And what I've done is, so it's a piece of cedar, and what this top level bit is basically a fish and chip fork. And basically what you want to do to start with, if you imagine the, I'll do it this way, you want to measure, you want it, the fetish to basically go right up to this edge here, and to run over the back here. If you've made the holes exactly to the dimensions I say, you'll have that sort of gap anyway, so have it to run to the back. And then what I've done is basically the same thing with a fish and chip fork. I've made the lighter brown part, cut it so that the edge comes up to the edge of the hole here, to the lip of it, and the back stops at the back here. So when it's over, what it's going to do is obviously block off here at the back and to the sides as well, so the air has no other choice but to flow in a smooth low line over the top here, hits that lip and splits. Obviously the air goes down the chamber. This one I've made here, that is actually a fish and chip fork. I've actually just found a lollipop stick, which would actually work the same. I think it would possibly just work if you made it. Probably quite good to make these holes a little bit thinner, then you're going to have slightly thicker plastic and not risk cracking it at all. You have to do a sort of super glue bodge job, which works okay. But you could use a lollipop stick, mark it out once again. With the lollipop stick you would have to do this. Obviously let me just cut this off, give you a quick demonstration. Alright, so what that would be is you would mark it off to the back there, you'd mark a line there, you'd also mark where you're going to chop it here, and then obviously if you just draw a line here, there and there, what we do is basically chop it here, so we've got this sort of template now. So what we do with a fine Stanley blade or a craft knife is cut along these lines here, so you've got an edge there that goes into the back and then a thin edge there, so then you end up with this sort of shape. I think I am going to make another one anyway, because I've got to in a minute. I'll show you me making that. So basically what you do is you would stick that on there, and then once it's firmly stuck with wood glue or PVA, kind of same thing really, is because this lollipop stick for instance is quite thick, it's a slightly thick, probably, I don't know, 0.8 of a mil, so thicker, is get some fine sandpaper, or relatively fine sandpaper, and obviously when it's done, just slowly take away a bit, plane it down so to speak, so it becomes a little bit thinner, because you don't want too much air gap, otherwise too much air is going to flow over it, it's not enough going to hit the lip. You could make quite a high one if you're going to get some more breath coming through the pipe and a slight tone, but there's obviously going to be an optimum level where you get a little bit of breath and a really nice tone out of the pipe. So I'm going to make another one anyway with this lollipop stick, and we'll try it, because I haven't actually tried it with a lollipop stick, I've just found this, and as I say, the fish and chip shop's closed at the moment, so away we go. I'll show you that. I'll be making that in a minute. What I've done is just made this, cut a bit of cedar wood out. Got this free from a wood supply shop. We've got quite a big chunk, a bit of off cutting, etc. Gave them a couple of quid for it. It's very nice wood. This basically, I'll show you this way. You want this to be slightly wider than the lip here. So these got sort of 1 mil either side, so the air's nicely channeled over this ridge here to hit the lip here. As I say, at the back you want it to come right to the front there, and then I've got about about 4 millimeters over the back. Now a lot of the Native American Indian flutes you'll see have got quite nice carvings and stuff like this. You can do them as, you can just use a block like that. I like to add a little bit of style to it. So what I do is very basically just get a rounded file and just carve into it, just so we've got a bit of a ridge here, so when the elastic band goes over it around the flute, it just holds it on nice and securely. So I just guide it like that for a bit, and I'll show you the next phase in a minute. Right, so as I showed you earlier, I marked off the back there, and I've also marked off, as you can see it's here, ridge in pencil, groove there where we're going to cut round with a craft knife, Stanley blade as I've got here. Same thing with more of an industrial craft knife, I guess, in all simplicity. And very careful here. So I'm just going to basically cut along the ridge here. So you don't want the wood to split. So what I'll do is sort of just gently, just go at it, gently score it. Probably better off with a metal ruler, unless you've got a skill with a craft knife ruler, just going to dig into a plastic ruler. Just a worthy point and note. So, nice and solid, and press it down solid here. We'll start scoring it first. Wasn't moving around too much. Just slowly carve into it. So obviously at this point here we don't want to split the wood. You can always glue it back on. I'll show you the end result in a moment. Okay, so we've got our fine grade sandpaper tool here. On the other side, what I do is there might be a bit of roughness where you might have sawn it. Once again, just give it a little bit of a rub up and down on sandpaper. So end up with a really nice smooth surface there. And then what we're going to do in this case, as I say, fish and chips shop stick seems to be about the right depth. This is a lollipop stick, so it's going to be a little bit thicker. I'll put a little bit of glue on here, and then stick this on there, like so, and then just tidy it up a little bit. So I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so we've got our lollipop stick stuck on top of our wood now. Just with a bit of PVA glue. I'm just leaving it to stick at the moment to make sure that's not going to be as in tacky. And what I'll do now is just leave it for sort of 10-15 minutes. Just put a little bit of weight on top, something like that. Just hold it down, and we'll get back to that in a minute. Right, so what I've done is, as I said, what I've done is just fold up some sandpaper and just smoothed out the channel on that side and on that side. And as I say, even though there's a tiny little chip coming out, it causes a lot of turbulence before it then hits the note hole here and the S splits. So I've just been working on that a little bit, and as you can hear now, it's actually cut out quite a lot of the resonance and just starting to get a more clearer tone. There's less of the warbling going on, which is great. So I'll just work on this a little bit more. So I think I haven't actually tried it if you do a curved, if you do quite a bit and you end up with a bit of an arc, a bit of a concave shape. I haven't tried that, but I think the idea is to get the air going flat across the top. although I haven't experimented with other ways. I don't know how it's done if you buy a flute. And other videos I've only seen sort of 2 or 3 on YouTube, but I don't know what happens if it has got a bit of a concave sort of curve to it. So I'll just keep it flat, this one anyway, because the other flutes I've made work very well. And then what I'll do is basically just get a rubber band and just put a rubber band around it so it's permanent on there, and then we'll go up to the computer and start to tune it. Obviously you can use a guitar tuner to tune it. Most computers, Mac and PC, you can get a free little tone generator or something like that, and I'll be using GarageBand on an Apple Mac. So you just click the box here. Let me just move the camera down a little bit just so you can see where I'm at. I'm going to do it in G sharp. I think the standard tuning for Native American Indian flutes, Native American flutes, is F sharp. I made an F sharp, it sounds great, but I'm going to do a G sharp this time. Tuning, I always tune to 432 Hz. We'll be doing that in GarageBand. It's just a nicer tone for me personally than 440. And then we come up with this lovely screen. So what we see here is that when all the holes are open or all the holes are closed, you've got a G sharp. Obviously there's an octave shift there from one octave to another. And then you can also, which is quite cool for learning to play, you can include cross fingering, which opens up the other notes, so you can see what is attainable, and obviously all different sorts of when you're opening closing holes. I'll give you a little demonstration at the end. Obviously more notes can be attained, the sort of mid notes in between, etc. So, but all that we need is this really. So we know that to start with we need to with all the holes down or no holes in the flute whatsoever, we get G sharp, then first hole open, B, then C sharp, and we actually see where the holes are. So what I'm going to do to start with is tune the whole flute. At the moment we just want to saw the end off so it's actually in tune with a G sharp. Obviously the shorter it, well, not necessarily obviously, I learned that myself, but the shorter you saw it off, the higher tone goes. So if you're going to go for a sort of, I guess they're called piccolo flutes or very high flutes, you'd have a very short stubby one, but giving you the measurements of what I'm working to, and it should work out alright. So to start with, I'm going to tune it to a G sharp. Right, I've opened GarageBand. I'll just show you a little bit here. I'm going to create a part G sharp. So that's what we're going to tune the main flute to. To change the actual one I'm tuning, a lot of people use 440. As I say, I much prefer 432. So if we click on the information, if you're using a Mac and GarageBand, I don't know if you can get GarageBand for PC, but there's many things like it. I want to go to click on the effects, and the Mac actually has an AU pitch here. So you click on that, make sure the box go to the pencil, and then we want minus, it's about minus 31.8 in the logic sequence on a Mac, but I go for minus 32, some people go for minus 31 to attain that 432 hertz vibration. So what I'm going to do now, we've got a note there, so basically what we're going to do is I'm just going to gently play that. If we hear here, I'm just going to play our flute so far. So obviously we need to go up in hertz, so we're going to chop off about 1/8 of an inch. I'll show you the front 1/8 of an inch off the front of the flute, and just keep on going until we've got it about right. So as I say, it's best to take off tiny little bits as we go along, because obviously if you take too much you can't really add it back on unless you're very good at sanding the pipe down and super gluing it together again. So you just take little bits off, and obviously the pitch will go up, which we need to do because this pitch is lower than our G sharp at the present time. So where we are at the moment, someone's got a little bit more. So always remember, if we go past the G sharp, it's going to go up in pitch. But it's not the end of the world, because then you can always tune it to the next note up. So it's not the end of the world, but first of all, this one, a G sharp. Maybe a third of the note if you're going for sort of more extreme extravagant tunings, etc. So this is how we're doing here. Need to go up a little bit. I'm going to take a tiny bit off with hacksaw again. Right, okay, I think we're just about there. I don't want to be patronising. For those who haven't got a guitar tuner or even something on the computer, I'm sure you can get free ones. But if you're just doing it by ear, which is quite good for ear training at the end of the day, I think I'm almost there with this. We'll put the holes in now. We'll drill some holes. I'll explain that. I'll just pop downstairs and do that now. There's various things on Flutemat and flutemat.com, which explains various ways to do things. Quite an interesting website. Rather than have it in between the sound hole and the end, so you're putting the holes in between, it's good to shift them further down on finding to the end of the flute, because you get a nicer tone. If you shift them up here, you're okay with the first few notes, but then upstairs, as you get further into the sound hole, it has problems formulating the tone, which I think is obviously as the air splits at the sound hole, it needs time to sort of get a nice swirl or shape as it goes down the chamber. Right. What I'm doing is just marking off in the middle. We've got 38 centimetres from the sort of middle of the sound hole to the end of the flute. 38 centimetres, so that's 15, 16, 17, 19 centimetres. So if we mark 19 here, so that's the centre. So from sound hole to the end of the flute. And then what I recommend, personally, at the moment, you might do better. I'll possibly go, maybe if you make a video of your master creation, is I'm going to move it down, probably, we'll try 3/4 of an inch down. So that's going to basically sound hole 3. And then we want to go an inch down for 2, an inch down for 1, and then up for sound hole 4, and then, which we're not going to be using because we're making a 5-hole pentatonic flute in a minor key, let's say G sharp, and then another 2. So I'll just do that. Don't bore you to tears just while I mark off an inch down there, an inch down here. So we've got 3, 2, 1, and then moving up here we go up an inch from 3, which will be sound hole 4, and then up another one, which is sound hole 5, and up one more, which will be sound hole 6. So we don't want the holes too big, because if they're too big, as you open the holes, the pitch goes up, same as like when you shorten the actual flute itself. So these are little holes, and for the size of this piping, me showing you the size of these holes might save you a lot of bother, because I've gone through a lot of pipes using far too big a drill bits, and you kind of miss the pitch that you're after. So I hope you save me a bit of money there. Pop that hole in there. Slightly ski with, but I can live with it. I'm sure my fingers will stretch. We've got, we're going to be making a B, C sharp, D sharp, F sharp, and then the G sharp, which is an octave above. So off we go. What I'll do is we'll go over to GarageBand here. We know that we tune the pitch to G sharp. So we're going to go for the next one, which is going to be quite a way up, which is going to be B. So what we're going to do here, so this is B. So we just make the note here. So we need to go up basically. So what I'm going to do is get our little rounded file and start to just wiggle that around, screw it around a little bit, and start to wind in the hole. Let's try that, see if we get in there. Make sure sure both the other holes are closed up. You can hear it's a bit flat and he's got. Right, okay, so what also find handy is if you just get a bit of sandpaper, roll it into a bit of a cone, so you can insert it into the hole and just have a spin around just so it mellows out the edges of the hole as well, and pushes possibly a little bit of chaff inside. So we use our magic tool, a bit of cane or a stick, probably a bit of stick with a cloth on would probably be as good, so you don't even mark it with the edge of the cane, and then just have a little bit of a wiggle around the hole and make sure obviously you can sort of kind of view down it, see if there's any sort of hanging bits. You don't want them in the chamber particularly. Just keep on going, just giving a bit of a sand over the hole, sort of giving it a bit of a wiggle with the sandpaper, just giving it a twirl round. See how we're doing with that. And close. So we'll go to the next note, which is going to be a C sharp. So we're going to open up the second hole now. And we're going to do the same thing once again, and then move up the next note. Right, so a little update. I say, as I'm going through it, don't forget to have a little poke up with your stick, just see if there's any bits of chaff inside. We're just about to do the last hole. In fact, I've noticed a little bit of chaff in that one. Knock it out. Just give it a bit of a blow down there. Get all the bits out, and it's starting to sound really nice. Right, final hole is going to be an octave above, so it's going to be a G sharp, an octave above. Right then, hopefully that's in focus. Right, that's pretty much tuned now. So we've got. Right, so, and what I do now with this gloss pipe is, since we're pretty much in the ballpark of tuning, I put, just for fingering really, I put a little bit of a plastic disc there, sort of for styling, but just something to rest my finger, so that kind of, it's just a guide placement really, so I know where that stays. Put one underneath, could even put a random hole in it to get some ski whiff tuning if you like, I guess. But I just put a little dot there, it looks nice as well. And I sand the flute off, so it's actually matte, just with some coarse sandpaper, and then smooth off a little bit, and I've started to sort of spray them up a little bit. Obviously, if you're sanding things down plastic, it's health and safety and all that. I don't want you to cause yourself mischief. Wear a dust mask and possibly glasses and that sort of thing. Safety specs and all that are usual safety kit if you're inclined to be ultra safe that way. So anyway, I've got this nice matte finish now, and what I'm going to do, as I showed you before, that hole I just use a little bit of plastic. That's top of a milk jug in the UK, which just a little bit of plastic cut out, sanded down, then basically super glued on, just so that if you get into really playing, then you know where your finger placement is. So that's cool, and then I'll just mark what key it's in and put some blue stripes on it and that sort of thing, and I'll get on and decorate this one, and then knock out a little flute, little composition or something with a major, a F sharp minor, and a G sharp minor as well, something like that for the ending of the video. Alright then, so here's the final flute. As I say, I put my little bit of plastic on there just as a guiding hole, just so I know my finger placement, and that's for the reason why I sanded down the gloss flute, and just so I can spray some nice bands on it, and it's sounding rather good. And that's a G sharp, so nice one.